This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, um, we had two huge losses this week, and we will explore those over the course of the next hour. We'll discuss the life of the Reverend Jesse Jackson, as well as Robert Duvall, which, my energy is low, as you can tell. It's going to be a sad hour, man. Charles Kirkland and I will kind of dissect both these careers and talk about that. And I think we might have one film review. Charles, it is,
Oh, how to make a killing.
thank you. We'll have all that and more on the latest episode, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon. We're in the middle of February. It's Oscar season. We're about 3 weeks away from the Oscars. Is that about right? Three,
Yep,
less than a month away?
March 15th.
Thank you, sir. I thought it was March the 12th, but anyway, sometime nowhere less than a month away. Charles, how you doing today, man?
Well, I know we hadn't talked about this, but you know that something significant happened in the box office last week, meaning Wuthering Heights uh, topped the box office again, which makes the ninth time in a row that Warner Brothers has had a movie top the box office on its opening week. So Warner Brothers is super hot right now. I just to share that before we get to the sad stuff.
Yeah,
Something.
yeah. I mean, that's good, man. Wuthering Heights, man. Poor Emerald Fennell, who is, or Fennel is, whatever her last name is. She is taking a beating on socials, man, because people, it's one of those things with Wuthering Heights that either folks love it or they don't like it. There's not a lot of people in the middle. There's not a lot of gray to Wuthering Heights, at least this adaptation of it. So, I mean, congratulations to Warner Brothers. Emerald is it Fennel or Fennell? Thank
Fennell.
you. Emerald Fennell. I like her as a filmmaker, man. A promising young woman, Saltburn, and now this. She's definitely got a style, and that I respect and appreciate. There are certain other filmmakers that we've gone on record saying that they have styles that are not to my liking, but have a style because there's one particular filmmaker that Charles knows who I'm talking about that has no style that drives me absolutely batty. And so yes, I'll leave that there, man. But let's jump into this, man. Um, we lost two giants this week, man, and I know we throw that phrase around a lot. But we'll start with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, man. And I shared with Charles earlier because we always do a prep call like the morning of the show. And I said, this week I've just been silent, man, about Jesse Jackson. I talked about it privately among friends because, again, for reasons that we'll talk about momentarily, Jesse Jackson, of course, was Chicago born, uh, came up under Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to make sure I put that part in. And was a part of the movement of Dr. King's in I would say the mid 1960s because he graduated from North Carolina A&T in 61. So he came and started doing work in the civil rights movement and of course, leading with March on Washington all the way to King's death. Jackson actually was on the balcony along with Andrew Young and several others when King was assassinated, right? From that moment, so many of these guys went into public service. Of course, Andrew Young would become, I don't think he became the mayor of Atlanta, or did he?
Yes. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was mayor of Atlanta at one point. I know Maynard Jackson was in the early 1970s, and others of that movement all sort of moved along. Reverend Jackson, of course, founded Operation Push and later Operation Breadbasket From a cultural standpoint, we talk about our show is a film show, and we talk about, movies. And one of the films that I remember seeing him introducing or being featured in was Watt Stacks, 1973 film that kind of was like I guess an answer to Watts, that they brought Stax Records out and did an entire concert at the LA Coliseum. And if you get an opportunity to go back and watch Watts Stax, I know Reverend Jackson gave a speech and kind of riled, kind of like got the crowd going. But then later he came back to introduce Black Moses at the time, Isaac Hayes, and it's a memorable moment of watching that. Um, Jackson, of course, later on, famously in the 1980s and 1984 and 1988, of course, would run for president. I was sharing with Charles that I actually worked as a volunteer locally here in Washington, D.C. on his 88 campaign, and remember, how we were treated in the fundraisers and all the stuff that he did. People talk about he didn't win in either of these because he lost the nomination in 84 to Walter Mondale, and he lost the nomination in 1988 to Dukakis, Michael Dukakis, right? Um, but the win for Jackson, in addition to winning 13 states, a lot of people always talk about him running that second time, but he actually won 13 states in that year. And most notably, I was just reading an article, Charles, before we got on about, while he didn't actually win the actual nomination and become the party's shareholder, I mean, the party's holder, and who's actually ran for the office. What he did win was kind of registering over 10 million new voters or people who were disenfranchised and out of the system, and also creating a blueprint that 20 years later, Barack Obama would come along and use uh, in order to become president at that time. So, from a biblical standpoint, Charles, you can almost look at Jesse Jackson's life that he was John the Baptist, man. He wasn't the guy, but he was the guy who paved the way for the guy who was to come after him, right? And then, even if you think about it even deeper, Shirley Chisholm kind of ran, right? I mean, Shirley Chisholm showed up. Jesse Jackson ran so Barack Obama could eventually fly, right? So I think as we think about Jesse Jackson, and I've read a lot and heard a lot and kind of thought a lot about it this week, Charles, he wasn't a perfect servant because none of us are, right? But he was absolutely a public service servant to the nth degree. And his legacy is going to be the foundation that he laid and the blueprint he created amongst many other accomplishments, going over and freeing hostages and, a lot of other things that he did. He expanded Dr. King's message and took that message from ground roots to the political center and then kind of expanded it, man. So that's what I have for the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Charles Kirkland, what say you, my friend?
I think one of the most telling things about Jesse Jackson, and I don't know, you can take it with a grain of salt or whatever, but even Donald Trump praised him as being a force of nature like few others before him. And for our president to be glowing in statement over anyone, it says something about the nature of the person. I know that he had a few arguments with Obama, but for the most part, they were in lockstep about where the country needed to go, and they supported each other. And again, I was just surprised to see that statement come out. Lots of praise for who he was and what he's done, and I agree. He wasn't a perfect person, but I mean, how many of us are perfect? And as I can think of it, there's only one that was. So yeah, I think he did a number of great things for the country, for the race, as a civil rights leader. and he could have been dissuaded by the death of Martin Luther King standing there, but instead he took up the mantle and he continued to fight on. And so we thank Jesse Jackson for doing that.
So, before we continue, man, I'm going to try to do something that I don't think we've ever done here before because, we usually are doing the show on Zoom. And I want to bring something in because I heard this and it really moved me. Mark Lamont Hill was on, I guess, as a cast member of another podcast. Is it Joe Budden? I always mess the man's name
Yeah,
up.
Joe
Joe
Budden.
Budden. Joe
Joe
Budden's
Budden.
podcast. So I want to share this, man, so we can check this out because I really felt that this was pretty well done by this brother here. So give me a second. I'm going to make it happen. Oh yeah, I'm loving this, Charles, because this is what we call new computer issues. That is too funny, man. No, okay, so it's not going to let me do it, right? So I was trying to share a screen so that I can do something. Oh, there it is. Now it's going to let me do it. You got it, Charles? You see it? You're not seeing
Um,
anything? Oh, well, I could swear I'm looking right at
yeah,
the share.
yeah, I see it. Go ahead.
See it? All right, cool. All right, because you scared me for a second.
Yeah. People, anybody who loves black people.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a tough day. Early this morning, uh, Reverend Jesse Jackson passed away at the age of 84. It's a tough loss for so many of us. He had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he'd been ill for a while, so it wasn't a medical surprise. But it still was no less devastating for so many of us. Um, I think it's important for us to really understand who Jesse Jackson was and what he meant to our community, to our country, to the world. It sometimes as you age and new leaders come and new people come, it's easy to forget the people whose shoulders we stand on. But Jesse Jackson was different in every way imaginable. He's a child of the civil rights movement. He was a mentee of Martin Luther King. He was a civil rights pioneer himself. He's the founder of Operation Push, Operation Breadbasket. He did so many things for so many people. And I think it's incredibly important that we remember him for who he was. A lot of times, Martin Luther King is somebody who died and was swept into martyrdom like Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and all these other people. But Jesse Jackson had the burden. Jesse Jackson had the burden of living, to live. And he had to struggle, and he had to get up, and he had to fall, and he had to do all sorts of things, which is different and harder. And he did it with style and grace and dignity, and he did it for us. And I think we can't forget that. There is no civil rights movement without people like Jesse Jackson. He ran for president twice, in 1984 and 1988. And I think
88, that's Dukakis.
That's Dukakis. And he won 13 states, by the way. We like to act like that was a vanity run or a show run. He got more states than Joe Biden. But that wasn't just a vanity run. He expanded the electorate. He got people registered who weren't voting already. And that didn't just do Jesse Jackson a service. It did black people a service. He ran in 84 and Dinkins wins in 85. He runs in 88. Douglas Wilder becomes governor of Virginia in 89. He changed how voting worked. He changed how this country worked. And he forced the Democratic Party, as failed as it is and continues to be, he forced it to listen to our needs and to respond to black people in a way that people don't understand. Jesse Jackson freed hostages. He's the one who met with Arafat. He's the one who freed Hafez al-Assad. He went to Syria. He went to Palestine. He went to these places and brought hostages home. He created jobs. He forced companies in corporate America to listen to us and to act right by us. He organized boycotts that changed the world. Jesse Jackson was different, and he was a cultural icon. I think that's the part that people forget. One of the most important albums, you listen to Aretha Franklin's albums, he's there. You go to one of the most important concerts, Watt Stacks, he's speaking at Watt Stacks. And one of the hip hop samples you always hear is brothers and sisters. That's Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson was at every cultural event. He was opening space for people all across the board. He was on Sesame Street. I mean, he was everywhere. Um, and again, he did it for us. He was a global leader. Before we had black presidents, Jesse Jackson was our president. Before we had people who could represent us in corporate America, Jesse Jackson was our representative. Jesse Jackson was so special, and he was a mentor and a friend and a hero of mine. He's the first person to bring me to Africa. He took me around. He mentored me. He was always a friend. He was always just wonderful to me. But beyond that, I think the thing that I learned most from Jesse Jackson in conclusion is that he never stopped getting up. Have you ever?
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, man, I heard that, man, and I was supremely touched, man. And I thought, hey man, I can't really do it justice, man, but the Reverend Jesse Jackson, man, and I'll end mine with this, man. I remember um, you know, as a volunteer in '88, man, I think I told you the story that they did a fundraiser for him down at the Mayflower downtown, right? And of course, Marion Barry, who was really good friends with him because they had both been a part of the movement, was there, and I think they had the Whispers and the OJs that were there. And I remember the enthusiasm, man, of what that campaign had generated. Now, the first time when he made the run, and it was historic. It was, I'm not gonna call it a vanity run, but it was a run where he didn't really have a shot, right? The second time, as you just heard Mark Lamont Hill talk about, he was actually leading at some point during that primary season, man. Before the party coalesced behind Dinkins. I mean, not Dinkins, but Dukakis.
Dukakis.
So. Yeah, man. There's a lot there, man. And as I said earlier, man, my initial thoughts went to the negative, and I had to kind of pull back and understand that, you can't judge a person's life, man, on several small things because none of us are perfect, man. But Jesse Jackson, man, the his legacy will continue to live on, and his name will continue to ring out because of what he represented foundationally, not for just the party, but for our people and for our culture, man. So, Charles, anything you want to add to that before we close the book and move on?
I really want to reiterate what Mark said, which is really poignant in that it's harder for the person who lives than it is for the martyr who dies.
Mhm.
And for him to continue to live with grace and purpose was a shining example to all of us, and it really is special. He really was special.
And that absolutely is a great point, man. I had never thought about that because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X never got past 39. They both were gunned down at 39, and Jesse Jackson lived to 84. And inside of the living, the longer you live, there's going to be falls. You got to get back up. And he had enough of those during his time, man. So, wow. So, Jesse Jackson, man, as I said, 84 years old. His legacy is established, brother. He is absolutely good to go. Now, the other huge, as we kind of pivot, the other huge loss we had this week, Charles. And when I say this is a huge loss, man, I think as a film guy, man, and you and I think talked a little bit about this as well briefly. Robert Duvall, man, is an actor who just had such he there are people that we talk about who made movies like we'll talk about like this guy had so many of these films and he starred in these kinds of hit films, but Duvall was in so he gave so many performances in so many films that are among my favorite films of all time, right? And I thought about that. I was like, he was in two to three Godfather movies. He was in Apocalypse Now, Tender Mercies, The Apostle. I mean, his work span To Kill a Mockingbird. His work spans across like 4 decades, but it's a rich, dense 4 decades, right? And it is just amazing to me the range of characters that he played. We're not even talking about films like Lonesome, or like series like Lonesome Dove, or his Western work in Open Range with Kevin Costner. Just so much stuff there. And it's funny, Charles, because a couple of days ago, I read an article, and I didn't know this, and I'm not sure if you know it either, that in the late 50s and early 60s, three struggling actors all lived together. They were all really, really close friends. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, and Robert Duvall were all roommates and friends who scrounged around lending each other money, trying to find roles for each other. And all three of these guys would go on later on to all win Best Actor. They would all go along to have these legendary careers. Gene Hackman, of course, just, I think about Gene Hackman in so many films, man. French Connection. You think about him later on in Unforgiven. You think about Hackman in so much stuff. The same thing with all these guys, man. I thought about Duvall, man, and I was just like, I just had to shake my head, man, because I was looking at his run and I was like, my God, man. I mean, this guy, you talk about acting. Charles, go ahead, man. You go, because I could ramble on. Go ahead, man.
I mean, you said four, did you say 4
Four decades.
decades?
So he started in the
It,
60s. Well,
it,
actually, he went deeper than
I was
that.
gonna say it's much more than four
Yeah.
decades because
Like,
he started in the early late 50s and up until I want to say 2010 was his last movie. But anyway, he got an Oscar for being a country music star in Tender Mercies.
right.
He nominated for the Godfather, Apocalypse Now, The Great Santini, The Apostle, which you mentioned before, A Civil Action, and just so many. I mean, he's just one of the in the pantheon of great actors. I was so inspired by his passing to go back and watch To Kill a Mockingbird, where he one of his first big acting roles, and he was only in the film for maybe like 5 to 7 minutes at the very end when you actually get to see dang, now I can't think of his name.
Oh, you
Oh,
talking about in the Kill a Mockingbird?
Boo Radley.
Boo
Boo
Radley,
Rad.
yeah.
So you don't really get to see him till the end, but he's there and he's really the way he plays that role, just with the tenderness of, that character. He's just he's always been phenomenal and the Apostle. We keep coming back to that one because it's one of my favorites, because it has the religious themes that I really love about really good movies. Versus, I mean, what he does in The Godfather is great, and what he did in Apocalypse Now is great, but that one, the Apostle, just resonates with me in a way the others don't. And I just, and for a while he was typecast in this role of being the aged mentor, but it seemed like he was always old. I don't know, from whenever we see him, he always seemed like the old guy, just giving advice and stuff. But it's a big loss. I mean, 95 years old is a long time to live, and he did a lot of work in that time. So it's a big loss for the industry.
So we talk about his career, and I apologize. It's actually 6 decades. He was 60-year career, Robert Duvall, and there's a list of his 15 essential films, which I want to go through a little bit of this. And we've talked about several of these already. Of course, Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird in 1962. Um, it is just such a complex role that he plays, man. It's this outsider, and people think about that cast, Gregory Peck and all these other guys, man. Duvall holds his own, and this is one of his earliest works, and it would establish sort of his style of acting, which would kind of repeat itself over the course of his entire career about a guy who just brought a certain, not to borrow the Liam Neeson line, has a certain set of skills. But those skills he has, he executed them really, really well. There's another film which I was not familiar with. Now I'm going to be forced, Charles, because you know how I am. When you turn me on to a movie, I want to watch it. The Rain People from 1969. He's cast. He was. It's funny. He took the role over because the person who had the role was James Caan and couldn't do the role, so they subbed in Robert Duvall, put him opposite Shirley Knight in this film. So I will check that one out because I haven't seen it, but it's listed as one of his essentials. I'll check that out, which is also funny because him and Khan later on, 3 years later, would co-star with each other in The Godfather, the first film that they made in that series. I did not know, Charles, and I'd watched MASH, but I completely forgot that Robert Duvall originated the role of Frank Burns on that in that film.
Yep.
And I've got to go back and watch because I haven't watched MASH in a minute, the original one in a minute.
The movie, yeah.
The movie, yeah, not the show, the movie. Of course, we talk about his Tom Hagen, who is the one cool person alongside all these hotheads, James Caan, is it Jim Cazale who played Fredo, and of course Al Pacino who played Michael. His work is amazing, and it was funny, Charles, because when they talked about the first two Godfathers, of course, were Best Pictures. They had a 15-year break, and they came back and shot Godfather 3. And at the time, it was said that he didn't take the role because I think they offered him 1.5 or something like that at the time. And he later kind of clarified that his issue was that they had offered Al Pacino 5 times the amount of money they were charging him. And since it was a money grab, because he thought, they only making this movie because they want to make money. If it's a money grab, I should deserve to be paid as much as these other guys, which I wouldn't agree with. I know Michael is a star in the focus, but his character, as we find out when they sub him out and they sub in, what's his name? The guy that they brought in to take his place. God, I can't remember his name off the top of his head. I'm looking at his face, but I can't remember his name. But it wasn't the same movie without having the same core members of the cast in this film. And he's right. He's right. He was like, it wasn't the same movie. It definitely wasn't as good as the first two, and it absolutely wasn't. But that's not necessarily his fault. But he should have been involved in the make in that and as a cast member in Godfather 3 because his character was so kind of like goaded in the first two. Like he's a huge part of that film. Another film, Charles, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one, is called Tomorrow, written by the same playwright who had written To Kill a Mockingbird. And this was
Hmm.
his, yeah, so this one, I want to check this one out too. I heard Tomorrow is really good. I want to check this out, man. I really do. And by the time we come back in a week, we may not do it on air, but Charles knows how I am. I'd be like, yeah, man, I watched both of those. Those are good. The Outfit from 1973, a revenge masterpiece where he plays a character named Earl Macklin, who's an ex-con, who goes after the mob after they kill his brother and double cross him in this film. Um, Again, these are all inside of what I call the Robert Duvall playbook. And then there's Network,
Mm.
1976, man. Network, I don't know what to tell you. There's certain films, and you and I talk about this, Charles, a lot, right? There's certain films when I get upset sometimes with the people that are around me when I try to talk movies to them. I mean, seriously, we've had this conversation. I try to talk movies and I try to recommend what I think are great movies, and people just don't listen to me. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So I'm gonna stop arguing with people and just tell you, the audience, you should watch Network. Now, I'm not sure. Network, I think, still holds up well, right? Because there's certain movies. I got
Oh
into an
yeah.
argument. I got into an argument a day ago with one of my best friends who argued me down that he loved The Wiz, and I told him it didn't age well, right? Have you watched The Wiz recently?
Um, not. It's been a while. It's been a while. But I even when I did the last time I did watch it, yeah, it's a little problematic.
It didn't age well, man. So I always preference when I'm talking about older films because like I used in my analogy because I was always teased, well you like all those old Marlon Brando movies on the waterfront. I watch On the Waterfront now. I watched On the Waterfront recently. On the Waterfront still is a really good film. I don't care what you tell me. It's a nice and let me just say this, because I want people at home to understand this, right? When I talk about movies don't age well, right? Aging well is not about how old the movie is, right? To your point, Charles, you use the analogy something is problematic, right? There
Right.
are problems politically in films. Like when I watch a movie like Breakfast and Tiffany's now, oof. That one, ooh, that's not a movie you could make today, right? That the character that Mickey Rooney plays, which is this caricature of an Asian character, there's a couple of things in there that are very problematic in that film, right? The Wiz for me is problematic, and I'm going to get back to Robert Duvall in a second. But The Wiz is problematic for several reasons. That I just think that some of the production and set design work in that film just it was designed to work in 1978. It wasn't designed to work. They didn't think about it like, people are going to be watching this movie. So, for an example, you've heard me use this phrase, Charles, on the show. I call them snapshot films, right? Where you have kind of exteriors of a time that you can't recreate. Like you could recreate the film, but you can't recreate that look. A film like The Landlord, a film like Saturday Night Fever. We're doing an entire series this month on the film Gordon on what I call Black New York, these classic stories that are told in New York. The look of when Richard Roundtree comes out of the subway into
And Chef.
1971 New York. You can't recreate that. You can recreate the film, but you can't recreate that look. And that look still holds up, representing what New York looked like at that time, or what this part of this geography looked like at that time. So that's when I say movies don't hold up well. The Wiz, when I watch it now, mm-mm, mm-mm. Especially that scene where they're downstairs, the Quincy Jones scene. The color is green.
It's green.
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 So yes. So Network is a great film. It still holds up. It's very watchable. And then one of my 10 favorite films of all time, Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Um, if you've never seen Apocalypse Now, and Charles knows me, so you know where I'm going with this. The very opening of the film kind of sets the tone, right? You hear a helicopter in the background. You see the countryside in Vietnam, and you're listening to the intro for The End by The Doors. And when you hear that dun, 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 and when it goes, this is the end, you hear that, you see that napalm explode. Say, Francis Ford Coppola, you are an evil genius. That is great to see Robert Duvall standing there and with that famous line, I
I
love the
love the
smell
smell
of
of napalm in the
napalm in the
morning.
morning. Look, pause. It smells like victory.
Victory.
Wow. Iconic. Iconic, man. In that film, man. So Apocalypse Now, one of my favorite films. Love his performance in that. And then like the next year or the same year, The Great Santini. Bruh, he didn't win an Oscar for but see, that's another show.
He was nominated for the Great Santini, but he didn't win.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic in that. And then, since he didn't win for the Great Santini, 4 years later, he comes back with Tender Mercies, and he does win, playing a faded country star, Max Sledge. Brother had to learn how to sing to play this role, and boy, did he play it well and got it done. The next film, which is an essential, is Colors. Him opposite Sean Penn.
Mm.
The irony, which I hadn't thought about, but it's true, is that it was literally almost the same formula of Lethal Weapon, which had come the year before, right? And this one was
Hmm.
much more relatable about gangs, the whole thing with hothead partner played by a young Sean Penn, opposite Bobby Duvall in this. He was great, man, in colors, man. That one scene where he pulls Sean Penn's character in the back, remember that, and challenges him, and he goes, "I ain't got no problems with you." I forget what his character's name is, and he was like, "I thought you didn't." Robert Duvall, bruh. Lonesome Dove. We talked about that earlier, man. Him and Tommy Lee Jones, just gold. That Larry McMurtry story, gold. If you don't like westerns, I had people say, I don't like westerns. Sorry. It
And remember, Lonesome Dove wasn't a movie; it was a
was
series,
a series. That's what I said. Yeah, series.
it was on CBS, and it was one of those. It became much must see television when it came out in the late '80s, almost '90s. What wasn't it like '89? I think it was when
It was
Lonesome
80,
Dove
it
came
was
out.
89. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and man, if you missed the first episode, you it was hard to catch up because that thing just moved, and it was like not like any Western that you had seen before because it just built on each other so well. It was a fantastic performance from Duvall as this grizzled old rancher just trying to save his. I mean, it was. I love that movie. Love that series.
Then in 1991, there's Ramblin' Rose, another film that I have not had an opportunity to see, but trust me, it's coming. And to Charles's point, I would agree with him in ways. I can't tell you how much I agree with Charles on The Apostle. Charles knows that for years I ran a monthly screening series at my church. And The Apostle was one of the films that I not only showed and screened, but also I used to teach and taught this movie. And Duvall wrote, directed, and financed and starred in this film, the tale of sin and redemption about a Pentecostal preacher who kills his wife's lover, goes on the lam, and recreates himself as Apostle EF and builds a congregation in his town. It is I'm not gonna say it's my favorite performance but from him, but it is literally in the top three. It is such a really good performance. And there's one scene in it well, it's a couple of scenes, but one that I'll spotlight is the scene when Billy Bob Thornton comes and of course, wants to take his church down, right? He's on a, what do you call those things? Like the construction, what is it?
What's
Construction
that?
mover, crane, whatever it's called.
The front loader or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know
Oh,
what it's called, but he's coming to knock his church down. And in the scene, Duvall has a Bible in his hand, Charles, and he puts the Bible on the ground. And he's got his congregants around him, and he goes, "Nobody's gonna touch that Bible. Say it. Nobody touch the Bible. Nobody gonna move that Bible. Nobody gonna move that Bible." And Billy Bob Thornton comes up, "I'm gonna move that Bible. You're not gonna move that Bible. Say it one more time. Nobody move that Bible." And when he goes to pick up the Bible and he kneels and Duvall kneels with him, bro, I'm telling you, man, I can't even articulate just how powerful and effective of a scene that was, right? And he literally changes his heart in that moment, in that scene. And
on on their knees
yeah,
pr- in front of a Bible and surrounded by this congregation of people, and he converts that man right there. I'm like, genius,
but
genius.
the way he structured it, filmed it, conceived it, just brilliant. And they had that listed as the last of the 15. Oh, I'm sorry, they had Get Low. I remember Get Low. That I remember going to a screening to see Get Low. Get Low is a story of Duvall's character who, while he was very much alive, planned his funeral and came in attendance. It starred Bill Murray. I've seen Get Low, and it really was a good film. But the one that I wanted to add, which came a little later, was Open Range. with him and Kevin Costner.
Mm.
Did you ever see Open Range?
Yes, yes.
Where again he plays the grizzled vet. This time, I think he was boss to Kevin Costner's character, and they're trying to defend their land that they have in the open range. And man, every performance this guy had, man, you know, you think about him. Um, we talked about him, Hackman, and who was the other one? Was it Hoffman?
Hoffman, yeah.
Hoffman. Yeah, the three. You think about how different the three of these guys are, and can you imagine Charles just being a fly on the wall at the conversations about acting technique that would go on in that house between these three guys? Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. So Robert Duvall, man, much like Jesse Jackson passed at 84, Robert Duvall passed at 95. These guys lived full lives, man. So we are here as a podcast to appreciate and spotlight the things that moved us either politically or culturally with Jackson, cinematically with Duvall. And so that's what I got, Charles. I mean, again, this is a huge loss. I'm positive now that since it's the most recent passing, that, you know, the in memoriam is going to be very interesting on Oscar night when the last one rolls out, and there's going to probably be Robert Duvall for like 30 seconds. They'll find a clip of one of these great films that he's been in through this montage, and you know you'll see Robert Duvall. But man, what a cinematic life lived, man. I feel about him the way I felt about Hackman last year, and it's funny because there's a connection there between these characters, and it's like it's just very interesting to me. So, Charles, I give you the last word, man. So, what you got?
The last thing I want to say is Robert Duvall was a local guy. I mean, he grew up here in Annapolis. He went to Severn School. His father was a rear admiral in the Navy, even though even though he went and joined the army for a year after the Korean War. But he died right here in Middleburg. Right, we go to Middleburg Film Festival all the time. He had a 300-acre ranch out there in Middleburg, and I'm just amazed that as close as he has been, I've never even crossed his path. I never even had an opportunity to see him. I mean, I'm surprised that he never showed up at the film festival when we were out there or anything. But just the fact that, you know, he's so close. And so it just makes it even more, I don't know, reticent that we lose somebody who's that important, who lived right here in the area. And, you know, just it's a loss. It's a
Nah, this
loss.
business, man. So there you go, man. So rest in peace to Robert Duvall. Rest in peace to Jesse Jackson. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to touch both of those. So Charles, man, let's talk about movies, man. I mean, it's so ironic, man, that as we start the year off, that we really don't spend a lot of time reviewing movies. We pack so many movies in in the third and fourth quarter of every year. So then by the time we begin the beginning of the year, it's a lot of television because, you know, it's Oscar season. You know, there's really not too many movies of renown that are coming out right now. I'm not saying that to be funny. It's true. It's not a lot of movies that are going to be important films that are coming out in this time period. But you got one, Charles, and you notice I haven't been reviewing any movies because I've been home, you know, pretty much, you know, yeah.
You've been lazing off. That's what you've been doing.
You know the real truth, so you know lazing off ain't what it's called. What I've been doing.
Oh man.
You know, no, no,
No,
let me just say this before Charles starts. He's laughing when he says lazing off because there are a gang of movies that have been submitted to the Light Rail Film Festival, which is coming up June the 3rd through the 6th here in Washington, D.C. And Charles and I and the rest of the programming team have been watching movies and not just watching movies, but great movies. And we've had some interesting some interesting things to say about these movies, man. But again, what I and you've heard me say this to you privately, and I'll say it here on the public airwaves, that part of what I enjoy about the process of what we're going through now and looking at young filmmakers who are submitting their work, Charles, is that if you're going to be experimental early in your career, the film festival circuit is where you need to hone your level of creativity. You know, you think about, I think about, I don't know, what is this, 2026? So 17 years ago, there was a young kid coming out of USC who submitted a film, and we had an opportunity to screen it, and it won a Black Reel Award for in the short film category. This guy would go on to become an Oscar nominee this year, and Ryan Coogler's Fig was once a small independent short film. He had to start someplace. Barry Jenkins started someplace. Ava DuVernay, I remember her first film that we recognized. So we've been around for a lot of auspicious beginnings, right? Spike Lee, we were not around in 1983 when he did his student thesis, Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershops, We Cut Heads. So the film festival circuit is always interesting to me because we don't know of anybody yet, Charles, but I'm sure there's going to come a day where you're going to be like, that name sounds familiar. That guy had a film at Light Reel. So there you go, man. So yes, that's what I've been doing instead of
I
watching
mean,
movies in the
to your
theater.
point, 40 Acres, which had its DC premiere at the Light Reel Film Festival, just won a Black Reel Award for Outstanding Independent Film of the Year. So, I mean, you never would know what's going to happen coming out of Light Reel. We had another film, I Was the Weirdo, which played last year and has been playing all over the world. We premiered it at our festival, and now I was surprised that they had a hip hop festival in Italy,
You told me
but
that. You told me that. Oh no,
but
I
they
got one. I got
it
one for you.
played
Oh, go ahead.
it played at the hip hop festival in his Italy, and it just makes me feel like a proud father every time I see one of our films that I was like, that was at Light Reel, that was at Light Reel, that was at
Mhm.
Light Reel.
What about a film that's opening the Pan African Film Festival this year, the Class Reunion,
The
which
class
which
reunion,
which world premiered at our festival last year. So there you go, man. So we don't know of all these films, and we got some exciting stuff coming, man. I'm telling you, because I Charles knows I blowing up his phone, sending him titles like, yeah, I like discovering new work. I really do, Charles. Or I like discovering classic work. Like we were talking about some of these older Robert Duvall titles that I wasn't familiar with. So I just love movies, man. So
you
that
you
should be
talking about
exciting.
our legacy film series,
I can't. Yes, we. I'm glad you said it because I can't say what the legacy films are, but yes, part of our mission, and I was sharing with Charles this morning when we were pre-show talking about this, is that I think as we just, and it's funny you bring that up right now because we're talking about independent films and these films that I think kind of represent the message of the sorts of films that we would have played at our festival had our festival been around 25, 30, 40 years ago, right? So we've created something this year called the Light Reel Legacy series, and we're going to roll out two legacy films, which we will announce. And the reason why I said I can't say anything is we just reached out for permission. So I don't really have any permission yet to show these films. But the second one I sent you this morning, Charles, I would suggest you watch that because I rewatched it again. It's very sweet. I think it would play well. And we had about eight options of legacy films that we wanted to go with. And I didn't want to overload the schedule with a bunch of legacy, but I think it's important to sprinkle two or three in every year, man, so that folks sort of understand that even though you can watch certain movies at home, it's always good to watch movies back on the big screen the way they were meant to be seen, right?
yep,
That's kind of
yep.
how my thing. So go ahead, Charles. What you got for movies this week, man?
Well, there are a few movies opening this weekend, just a couple. And I'm only going to review one of them, and that's a movie called How to Make a Killing. How to Make a Killing stars Glenn Powell and Margaret Qualley, Topher Grace, Ed Harris, and some other people, Bill Camp and others. And it's a black comedy thriller written and directed by John Patton Ford, loosely inspired by a film from England called Kind Hearts and Coronets. Basically, what has happened is Beckett Redfellow is the son of Mary Redfellow, who got knocked up on her 18th birthday and was disowned by her father. She had to go off and live in New Jersey, as depressing as New Jersey can be,
Oh my God. Oh my God. Here we
and
go.
raise her son there. All the while, she's encouraging him to live the life that he deserves. Well, come to find out, Mary Redfellow and Beckett are heirs to the Redfellow fortune, which, despite being disowned, the trust still says whoever survives gets the money. We're talking about a accumulation of $28 billion of worth of money.
Hmm.
So, at the suggestion of his best friend from growing up, he decides he's going to start knocking off these people so that he can get the money. All these people who did him wrong, he and his mother wrong by disowning them. So basically, this film is about him doing whatever he can to get this money. And I'll say we've always talked about the essential things that you need for a movie to be successful. One of them is a good story, screenplay, a
Mhm.
good cinematography, and good music. Now, I'll say for two of the three of these things, this movie has.
Right.
But I think the story kind of lacks in that from one point of the film to almost the end of the third act of the film, it's got a certain tone, and then it just decides to change the tone and go away from the comedic roots that it was born in. And it really is kind of disappointing. In other words, they don't land the plane well in this film. I really enjoyed this film for a lot of it, but when they switched the tone, it just kind of left me with a lackluster feeling as we got to the end. Now, some people say that it made sense. Some people say that it just did not make sense, and I'm in that category where I wish that I had, if I were the writer, I had a whole better ending for this film than what there was, and I tested it out, and a lot of people agreed with me. It's entertaining. Glenn Powell he reaches into his hitman roots in this film a lot, and it's always good to see him on screen. Margaret Qualley is intriguing as in her character, and at one point in time, he's really telling this whole story to a priest uh, uh, as he's getting ready for his execution. Um, so he's telling this whole story, and at one point, the priest goes, "Well, you had all of this. Why did you keep going killing people?" And he goes, "I don't know. I just did." And so that's how you kind of feel about the movie when you get out of it. It's like, I don't know. I just did. So, in my estimation, it's a good film. It's not a great film. It could be a better film. If you were going to go to the theaters, I would say maybe not. See something else. The Send Help is still out there, and some other things that you could really enjoy a lot more. I gave this movie a C, a straight C. I wanted to give it a C minus, but I'm like, it's not that bad. It's the C.
Let's see. Huh? Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So, and that's the only one you're gonna touch this week.
That's it. That's it. That's all.
Wow. 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 All right. Well, Charles, I don't know what else to tell you, man. I think that I guess we've got some movies coming up. All the fun that's happening right now for me is all happening on the small screen right now. I mean, we're we're immersed in, you got Hijack going on, and these are all the things that we're covering on the site. Hijack, um, Starfleet Academy, Star Trek Starfleet Academy, Shrinking, we're covering. I'm trying to think of all the stuff that we're covering on the site right
Mm.
now on the filmgordon.com. And then you got Paradise dropping on Monday, the first three episodes of that, so that people can watch next week. And of course, you're jazzed up about, oh, Daredevil, that's coming up next month. It's Monarch Legacy of Monsters, Charles. That's the one I was thinking about. Remember when I told you there was one more that we had left out?
Well,
Nothing?
that doesn't come out till next week.
That's next week too, the 27th, right?
Right. We got Scream 7 next week, and we got Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and another film called Pillion. I don't know if we'll review that one though.
Well, you could.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So yeah, man. So that's what we got, man. But I think we're about to land the plane because when you talk about people having difficulties landing the plane, quick story. I remember years ago, Charles and I were at the New African Film Festival, and sort of cold night. We're watching these films that at the time we were thinking about we wanted to bring into the festival, and we saw this Western. Forget what African country the Western was from, right? Really good Western. The whole time it's on, I'm nudging Charles. I'm like, man, we need to get
This,
this one.
this is the one.
Right. We get about 20 minutes from the conclusion. And to Charles' point, man, it would almost be like a guy coming in to catch a ball and he got it right in his hands. And he's like, that movie fumbled the last 20 minutes, and Charles and I looked at each other. I was like, nope.
Looking
Couldn't
worse than
bring
the
it
New
on.
York Mets outfielder.
Wow. Couldn't bring it home, man. It's the second time Charles is taking shots. Jersey and Mets outfielder. I want you to know that he did that. So when I come back, when I'm feeling less honorable and in an integrity position that I'm in right now, Charles is gonna get it. But as we tell you guys in closing, as we wrap this thing up, as we tell you in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. I will be going back watching a lot of Robert Duvall's work. And prayers, Charles, of course, for the families of Jesse Jackson and Robert Duvall. These guys, the race is over for them, but they've left us a legacy that we can keep moving forward with, man. So just something to think about on the way out the door, man. And as we tell you, we've already kind of wrapped it up. We'll see you guys on the other side next week. Peace, and we out, man. Take care.